and of course, Derrida. I don't know if our students have, Derrida is an intricate and very prolific philosopher. And some of the issues that you've covered in class with Dr. Amini, I'm sure, have been quite enlightening for you, but he's also a very complex philosopher. And there has been all sorts of controversies about his work. But anyway, I believe, like Simon Critchley says, that we haven't finished with Derrida. We still need him his legacy will outlive him. This is a fact. So, just a few things about what is an ethical reading. There are more questions than answers, you can imagine. But I thought I'll spell them out as bullets. And maybe perhaps there will be one or two questions on this. I would understand if there aren't. But I'm not sure myself that I can answer all the questions. But just a few things. So the issue of the ethical reading, which deconstruction is really about. First question: Is there an ethical obligation involved in the act of reading initially? Is there such an obligation? And if the reader happens to be a critic or a teacher, like a teacher here, is that obligation directed towards students, or the critic's readers, or towards the university, the institution, etc.? So, these are main issues that Derrida raises in his with his deconstruction. As you know, deconstruction is not a method. Derrida was loath to produce a method. It was a way of reading, that of course involves, and Professor Bebeya showed it very well by reading The Myth of Narcissus, which involves close reading. Your teacher always tells you, close reading, read text closely, close reading of text. Learning to hear, and we heard many things today, to hear what's on the page. Not simply to see, but to hear what's on the page. Listening to the other, listening closely. Close reading, Derrida believes, can prepare us for encountering the other, or as he puts it, for close encounters with the other. So hearing better, listening better, what people, including foes, not simply friends, might have to say. I will point out two major texts that have guided my paper, but I'm not going to read them. I'm going to read it as I told you. That was a promise. It's the John Hillis Miller's The Ethics of Reading, 1987.
And he's a deconstructionist. The point is that he turns, he makes that ethical turn and move.
Absolutely. And one of the, once he called himself one of the disciples of Derrida, doesn't like the word, but he he traveled from Yale to Irvine when Yale started. Anyway,
he has recently died, by the way.
Right. I didn't know that.
I think in February or something.
Yeah, thank you. So Derrida moves from the field of performativity to the field of morality, and This is a quote from Hillis Miller on the ethics of reading. I still stand before the law of the ethics of reading, quote unquote. I still stand before the law of the ethics of reading, subject to it, compelled by it, persuaded of its existence and sovereignty by what happens to me when I read. What happens is and I must. That is always the same, but always different, unique, idiomatic. Standing before the law is the only possible reaction to the reader, which is to acquiesce to its command, viewing not these as specific acts to be accompanied, but as the mark of a necessity of forming a project directed towards history. It's a very interesting quote. Of course, it's difficult to listen to it in passing like this. I think it captures the meaning of the ethics of reading. I was going to dwell a little bit on somebody you have seen in your course, a critic who visited Nafavrid many years ago before dying, Hans Robert Jauss, the school of reception theorists, Jauss, who I believe in my case, but I'm not the only one, whose hermeneutic approach to text also involves ethics and an ethical reading. It's not by chance that Paul de Man signed the preface of his book towards Jauss's title. My memory is failing me. Anyway, to come back. I mean, his major work. Towards
His major work.
Hans Robert Jauss.
But even Miller talks about Jauss as well.
Yes, he does. He does, absolutely. And for him, Jauss is very, especially the notion that which came out from Jauss was influenced by Gadamer, the notion of the fusion of horizons of expectations, how a text travels in time, and how the fusion of expectations of its readers changes in time, etc. Very interesting notion, and extremely, and again, which is associated with the ethics of reading. So, anyway, this is just, I throw this in passing for our students who would like to read more about this. I think Miller focuses on three people in his book. Sartre, he says, for example, talking about the ethical approach to literary studies, he says Sartre finds its expression, the ethical reading of text, in...
Now the book is Blindness and Insight. I myself have kept...
that's easier. The man. Blindness and Insight. Jauss is towards an aesthetic of reader response. I mean, major text. Anyway, it's everywhere. So, to go back to Miller, Sartre, who finds expression in the individual commitment to effective political action. For Jauss, the creation of an awareness of one's relationship with the other, and of course for himself, Hillis Miller, it means the responsibility of literary scholars towards their profession and towards their students. This is what ethical reading should be about. So this is very interesting. I think it's Miller. It's Miller who insists that that reading should have a purpose. There's a purposiveness, he says, in reading, which is very important. And this is something that he explains. He also develops the notion of that Professor Bouhlila mentioned, the context, the importance of the context. Context is defined as in the process of reading. It is informed by reading's inherent purposiveness. And in passing, and again Professor Bouhlila said this, in his afterword of the text of the book Limited, Inc., INC, 1988, Jacques Derrida explains that his famous sentence, the sentence that Professor Bouhlila mentioned, il n'y a pas de hors texte. He explains it once and for all, because there have been all sorts of versions about this. And he says, il n'y a pas de hors texte should always have been understood as there is no outside context. No outside context. Deconstruction is therefore only about text, is therefore not only about text, but about the world, about history, about reality, about being, and about the other. This context is constituted by différence, meaning that contexts are never fully determined. So on the one hand, there is no outside context, but on the other hand, there is always something which escapes the context, because it can never be fully determined, etc. Very interesting. So for those who believe that, and many critics, in literary theory, you must have read about them, believe that deconstruction is something, just concerned with language, language. That some people say it's superficial. It's not concerned with history.
Even nihilism, it was accused of being nihilist.
Exactly. It's Derrida, of course, contradicts them. All his work contradicts them, but this particular passage is very telling. The other book that I mentioned is Simon Critchley's book. It's called the Ethics of Deconstruction, and it was published in 2014. Simon Critchley is a philosopher. He came to La Manuba for one of our conferences, the conference on laughter, and it's published. Because he wrote a book on the comic, on laughter and humor. It's called on humor, and he delivered a wonderful paper at La Manuba. Very interesting thinker, philosopher. I think it's well known that Critchley was one of the first philosophers to really put the ethics of deconstruction on the critical, on the theory map. This is very. Critchley insists that ethics must be associated with the work of Levinas, another philosopher. And it should be understood by that which takes place during an encounter with the other. This is what Levinas believed, argues. This other is specifically another person, a human other. In encountering the other, the ego seeks to incorporate and reduce the alterity of the other to sameness, to something which can be fully known and comprehended. The other, of course, refuses this reduction, etc. But simply to say that these are texts which are seminal in our journey around the notion of ethics of reading. In his book, Critchley argues, in his conclusion, that deconstruction is ethical. because it respectfully takes irreducible alterity into account, and because a deconstructive reading of text produces this respect. I think Professor Bebeya gave us a sample of how one can read the Narcissus myth in a deconstructive way. Really interesting. There is a lot of respect involved. Derrida once said about his own deconstruction, he said, il y a du devoir dans la déconstruction. There is duty in deconstruction. It's hard work, and it's an obligation. Le devoir. Very interesting quote. Incidentally, Derrida's last work, which involves our relationship with the animals, which he gave in a series of conferences, which were published as books. The Beast and the Sovereign.
Animal that therefore I am.
And the animal that therefore I am.
In French, he had the play with l'animal que donc je suis.
Absolutely.
Like Descartes, je pense donc je suis. And Derrida plays on the idea of je suis, c'est l'auxiliaire être, to be, or c'est suivre. Donc l'animal que donc je suis means that the animal comes first and I am following the animal. And if you think about the Genesis, animals came first before man, for human beings. Yeah, animals then came Adam. So this is why, in a way, this is exactly what is meant by the idea of the deferral of meaning. Meaning is always already postponed in the sense that we have a multiplicity of meanings. If you just fix or impose one particular meaning on one particular statement, then you have destroyed all the other differences, all the otherness, all the other different meanings. And so this is why you have close reading enables you to read a text with the care, with consideration of its different meanings and the meaning that is already deferred. This is how usually we happen to give a totalized meaning, and it is a perspective that usually is informed by what we know, by our own knowledge, our own morality. And it's not our own morality, it's the it's the discourse, the dominant discourse, and the dominant. While ethics is a critical reading, of morality. Critical is a deconstructive reading of morality. When something, because Derrida has spoken, has written about justice as well. There's something missing in morality. This is why I'm sorry, I think I have interrupted you. So sorry.
Second episode.
I'll talk about just to rebound on what Professor Bebeya was saying. Derrida is not only a philosopher but also a critic, and he reads D.H. Lawrence's poem *The Snake* in a deconstructive way, by including Levinas's ambiguous position towards animals. You know, by Levinas, just like Heidegger before him, or along with him, believe that animals, because animals do not speak, they have a life, but they do not exist.
Mm.
So there is a kind of lack of an uncomfortable position towards the animals. And Derrida, the animals lack a face, face, properly speaking, says Levinas. And for Derrida, this lack of a voice makes humans ethically responsible for the animals, which is not what is happening as we know. You know, it's a fact. In Derrida's reading of the snake, we discover a non-anthropocentric reading that shows that there is, a lack of human responsibility towards the animals, and just like the notion of hospitality that my distinguished friend and colleague mentioned, if hospitality means the crossing of boundaries, then it requires allowing the other of the humans, that is the animal, to cross the boundary also traditionally fixed between the two, yet without having to prove first that the animal is like the human, says Derrida. And so hospitality renegotiates the issue of crossing the limits boundaries between species this time. And his last work is about this. You know, surprisingly enough, it's about defending the animal world and the animal species by showing how humans have failed ethically in their responsibility towards the animals. The Beast and the Sovereign, the animal that therefore I am. Critchley, just a quote from Critchley before I conclude. Critchley says what Derrida offers us is a practice of reading which is not a method, but which can be imitated, which is imitable. That practice of reading is really a practice of double reading with the intentions of the text, and reading against the intentions of the text, just like what Professor Berbea did. Two steps: reading systematically, and reading always in terms of the whole structure or architectonics in which the text is articulated. And you know, this is why the work of this man is, this philosopher is very important. Critchley says in an interview about this notion of ethical reading. There is an ethics of reading for sure, but I would say that quote unquote, but I would say that's what's driving that ethics of reading at the core of Derrida's practice, in an unconditional imperative of a Levinasian kind, a responsibility which always finds difficulty in being philosophically articulated. And so the way Derrida will often argue, it will be, for example, like a kind of unconditional forgiveness, which is a concept for which he had a lot of criticism. How can you forgive unconditionally people who have committed horrible crimes? But you know, this is something else. So this is why Derrida believes that ethical reading and deconstruction involves this notion of duty. All right, of duty. It is a duty, even if it's not a technique, but it's something that can inspire others. It's something that is imitable, even if there are no clear rules for it. And we just had a beautiful example today with Professor Berbe's. I will definitely read your conference. So I think I promised to be short, and I've taken a little longer than I thought. But thank you for having come, and I give the floor to our colleague Dr. Beliti to round up this session.
Thank you very much, Professor Bouhlila. Thank you very much indeed for this